Revenge with Karen.
"This is for my best child," he said, and signed the paper with the same hand that once guided mine through algebra homework and late-night debugging marathons. Just like that. 8 strokes of a Montblanc pen and 2 decades of my life were flushed down the polished walnut table in Conference Room B. My name wasn't even on the agenda, just hers. Madison, my stepsister, girl who thought a pivot table was a yoga move and once asked if Java was gluten-free. She clapped when he passed her the folder. Clapped, like she'd just been handed a damn tiara at a mall pageant. Her fake nails clicked against the leather portfolio as she flipped it open, like she even knew what she was reading. I didn't say a word, not because I was holding back rage, not because I was being the bigger person, but because in that moment, all I felt was a strange, low weight, like the air had been sucked out of my chest and replaced with static. My heart didn't race. It just paused, like even it couldn't believe the audacity of what was happening. Dad looked at me once, just once, over his glasses like he was expecting me to make a scene or cry or at least flinch. I didn't. I smiled, faint, controlled. The kind of smile you give when your soul's packing its bags and heading for the fire escape. "Understood," I said. 2 syllables, and I stood up. He tried to say something, a stammer, a cough, a sentence that started with "you know this isn't personal" and ended with the sound of his own guilt trying to shapeshift into logic. But I didn't stay to hear it. I walked out, past the floor-to-ceiling glass walls that made this office look like a prison for startup bros, past the interns in ironic cardigans, past the framed articles about our company being the future of infrastructure. A future, apparently run by the kind of woman who once tried to PayPal herself a pumpkin spice latte from the company Venmo. I didn't even take the elevator. I took the stairs. 14 floors, no music, just the sound of my boots on concrete and the thud of my resignation letter, already signed, already dated, pressed between my fingers like a silent grenade. By the time I hit the lobby, it was already in motion. Not revenge, not sabotage, just withdrawal, a quiet retreat like pulling a needle from a vein. No bleeding, not yet, but something vital had already begun to leak out. Back upstairs, they were probably toasting. Madison with her girl-boss grin, Dad trying not to look at the empty chair I left behind. The one with my name still engraved on the backrest because HR hadn't printed the new plaque yet. They'd think I left quietly, gracefully, the good daughter, one who builds things but never breaks them. But here's what no one knew. I'd already broken it. Not the company, not the servers, just the illusion that I'd stay forever. The day before that meeting, I submitted a quiet little update to our internal documentation. Routine maintenance, minor license change, approved by legal, stamped, archived. 1 line of code in the architecture notes. Admin access restricted pending executive succession validation. Dry, boring, buried beneath 5 folders and a firewall. No one read it. No one ever reads the architecture notes. Except me. I wrote them. I spent 15 years building that system, not just the code base, but the ecosystem around it. The modular shell scripts, the auto-patching daemons, the rollback fail-safes. All of it smart enough to evolve, scale, protect, and when necessary, lock itself down. Tucked into the heart of that digital fortress was a single conditional writer. If executive credential not equal to authorized admin ID, license path, right arrow null. I wasn't trying to be clever. I was trying to survive. Because long before that boardroom betrayal, I saw it coming. The way Dad started leaving me out of executive meetings, Madison began showing up in those garish power suits and filming leadership tips for her TikTok followers in the bathroom mirror. The way he said, "It's time for younger energy," like I wasn't the one who built the damn platform that paid for her Range Rover and her resin nail habit. So I made a decision, not out of spite, but because I knew what would happen the second I walked away. I went back to my office, closed the door, shut the blinds, and began the offboarding. It wasn't a tantrum, it was a checklist. I returned my access badge, cleared my desk, left behind the company-issued MacBook but removed the hard drive per policy. No one questioned me, no one stopped me. In fact, the only person who even spoke was Raj, the intern, who peeked in as I was locking the file drawer and said, "You built the whole back end, didn't you?" I looked up, just nodded. He blinked. "They are really doing this." Handed him the coffee mug I kept by my monitor. White ceramic. Black letters. "I run on caffeine and root access." "Take care of the logs, Raj," I said, "and read the version notes. Every line." That was the last thing I said in that building. The last piece of advice. The last warning. A flare in the dark that no one saw until the forest was already ash. Outside, the wind was cold and indifferent. I stood by the curb, one hand on the handle of the rolling suitcase that held everything I needed. Notebooks, the flash drive, a printed copy of the clause, my name dated, notarized, just in case. A town car pulled up. I didn't look back, not once. Not at the office. Not at the skyline. Not at the tower I'd helped build from scratch. You don't look back at a place that pretends you never mattered. Inside the car, my phone buzzed with a group chat ping. Party Popper congrats, Mads. Party Popper Vision 2025 kicks off tomorrow. Drinks at 7? I swiped it away. No reply. Only a whisper to myself, barely audible over the sound of the city rushing past the window. Let it all burn. My hands moved on autopilot like they'd done this 100 times before. Not just packing, but letting go. One mug, one notebook, one photo of Mom and me on the cabin porch before the merger. The air in my office felt colder, tighter. The HVAC had forgotten I still existed. No goodbye party. No cupcake tray from HR. Just the occasional head poking in, then out, like they were afraid incompetence might be contagious now that the real leadership had arrived. Nobody said anything directly. Of course not. We're all trained in the art of corporate cowardice. Speak up and you're not a team player. Raise questions and you're resistant to change. But their silence was loud enough. Nervous shuffle of feet in the hallway. The one teammate who peeked in saw me sorting cables and backed out so fast he almost tripped on the damn rug. Except for Raj. He knocked softly, holding a Red Bull and a pitiful little face like someone had just kicked his startup dreams in the shins. So, this is really happening? I nodded. Carefully slid my whiteboard markers into a Ziploc like I'd done it 1,000 times. My desk had always been obsessively neat, ironic considering the digital chaos I managed for a living. I thought you'd, I don't know, fight it, he asked. There's nothing to fight, I said. You don't argue with a train after it's hit you. He lingered. Then you built the whole back end, didn't you? I didn't smile, didn't nod. Just gave him a look that said, read the logs. Connect the dots. Get out while you can. After he left, I kept going. Badge, placed in the tray like I was returning a borrowed book. Laptop, cleaned and encrypted, then formatted per policy. External drives accounted for and returned, minus the one I legally owned. It all felt sterile, like I was clocking out from a shift instead of closing the door on a legacy. What they didn't see, what they couldn't see, was what was already happening beneath the surface. 8 months ago, I started rebuilding parts of the architecture in parallel. Same tools, same functions, but with one key difference: licensing nodes. I created modular capsules, each one wrapped in a conditional access shell. If the admin's signature changed without a verified override token, mine, it would all shift to dormant state. Not delete, not corrupt, just withdraw. It was legal, documented, reviewed, signed. Nobody cared back then because they assumed I'd always be there, that I couldn't leave, that I'd keep patching bugs while they played visionaries on LinkedIn. I submitted a form to IT, full offboarding initiated, closure of my dev environment, transfer of non-proprietary accounts. A few engineers pinged me in Slack with half-hearted "we'll miss you" emojis. I responded with a single waving hand. No bitterness, no heart emojis, just a wave. My email signature changed to former lead architect, timestamped, logged. Meanwhile, a daemon ticked quietly on the deployment server. Not a bomb, nothing dramatic. Just a clock waiting for midnight and one condition: a leadership credential mismatch. That process was buried 4 layers down inside the platform kernel, disguised as a redundant health check. If anyone had actually read the architecture handbook, they'd know. But that thing was 300 pages, and Madison once printed it just to use as a laptop stand during Zoom calls. One more detail: I left behind a paper trail. Not a manifesto. Not a tell-all. Just a small folder labeled escrow licensing notes, time-stamped and linked to my legal rider. It lived on our shared server, buried under operations compliance archived structural variants. A breadcrumb trail for the rare soul curious enough to ask, what happens if the builder leaves? Nobody asked. They never do. My final act before logging out was pushing a dummy commit to the sandbox repo, a line of code that did nothing but passed the linter. Commented in plain English: a system that remembers who made it knows when to let go. After that, I deleted my local access tokens, sent my farewell email, thank you for the opportunities, and best of luck with Vision 2025, and stepped into the hallway. I didn't expect applause, but the sheer absence of anything was almost impressive. No handshake, no one chasing me down, just the rhythmic click of my boots on the tile and the feeling of 1,000 invisible threads being snipped behind me. At the exit turnstile, I paused, swiped my badge one last time. It blinked green, opened, and then, because poetic justice deserves an audience, I turned around and watched as the office lights behind the glass doors dimmed for a split second. Barely noticeable, just a flicker. But I knew what it meant. The system had detected the change. The condition was met. Countdown had begun. Madison wore white. White, like she was a messianic marketing angel descended from the cloud, not the nepotistic blight that just turned our codebase into a linked-in ice sculpture. The photos hit social within hours. A Vision 2025 kickoff session, complete with craft kombucha, rented succulents, and a foam board slogan that said, modernize, monetize, maximize. Someone even had the gall to add a hashtag, #Mads the CEO. I watched the whole clown parade unfold from a burner account named Susan from Accounts. It had 3 followers and a profile picture of a cat wearing glasses. Nobody noticed I was watching. Nobody ever notices the architect when the decorators take over. They'd taken the conference room I designed, literally designed, from layout to airflow specs, and turned it into a Tex cosplay zone. Dev posted a boomerang of himself clapping, while Madison scribbled disruptive paradigms on a glass whiteboard like she was decoding ancient runes. Another posted a group selfie captioned, brainstorming how to reinvent the wheel, but sexier. That would have been laughable enough. But then I saw it. A tweet from Kenny. Poor, sweet Kenny, the junior engineer who still believed you could refactor a legacy monolith in a weekend if you just believed in yourself, posted a photo of a commit log. At first glance, it looked harmless. A few module headers, some namespace changes, a flashy new wrapper class he'd named Phoenix V2, but buried 2 screenshots deep was a line that made my jaw tighten, removing legacy permissions check for smoother admin flow. My legacy permissions check. The one that determined whether or not a process had been validated against the licensing rider. They didn't know what they were touching. Code wasn't a gate, they thought it was dead weight. But the moment they ripped it out, they essentially blindfolded the system. No validation, no override path, just a sleek new pipeline running on vibes and HubSpot optimism. In the old days, this would have made me furious, not anymore. I screenshotted the tweet, archived the commit hash, saved it all in a folder on my encrypted drive called Insurance. Then I shut the laptop and grabbed my keys. Law firm's office was quiet. Glass and chrome. Cold coffee in the carafe, and a receptionist who greeted me like I was invisible until she saw the appointment name. E. Hargrave. I didn't need to say much. The partner handling my case was a woman named Delaney, former IP litigator turned corporate structuring ninja. We'd met 6 months ago. I paid her retainer in full, up front, after Dad first started making noises about succession planning. Reviewed everything again, line by line. The clause in question was embedded in Section 7C of my employment amendment, ratified after the Series C round. It stated that any shift in executive ownership required a signature revalidation for continued access to modular proprietary structures developed under my oversight. Legalese for, you change the boss, you lose the keys unless I say otherwise. It wasn't a secret clause. It was just boring. Kind of clause only 3 people in the company had ever read, me, Delaney, and the paralegal who once asked if modular logic withdrawal was a software condition or a mental health issue. Delaney skimmed the new updates I brought, Madison's ascension, the public change of control documents, the commit logs from Kenny. She smiled. The kind of smile that says, they just activated their own bear trap. So, she asked, casually, how long do they have before the system notices? Technically, it already has, I said. She nodded, clicked her pen, and added one more line to her notes. You want to preemptively file anything? I shook my head. Not yet. Let them keep dancing. When I got back to the hotel, the celebratory posts had turned into an avalanche. Madison had posted a TikTok of herself popping champagne in the server room, which she'd apparently turned into her vibe cave, complete with LED lights and a ring cam setup. The caption read, from side hustle to CEO clinking glasses, never let your stepsister dull your sparkles. The comments were brutal. All sycophants and grifters. Yes, queen, men could never, bet your dad's so proud. I closed the app, opened my system dashboard. watched as the trigger demon continued its silent count. There was no alert, no pop-up, no siren, just a small line of green text that now read, Leadership transition, detected. Rider verification, null. License countdown, 32-1647. Let them enjoy their champagne. The fireworks start at 0. The hotel room was a minimalist box with blackout curtains and a desk that wobbled slightly if you leaned on the left side. It smelled like bleach and old decisions, the kind of place you stay in when you're not running from something, just waiting for it to collapse on its own. I kicked off my boots, opened the laptop, and connected to the shadow node I'd built for exactly this kind of occasion. Not sabotage, just diagnostics, monitoring. The dashboard loaded slow, deliberate, like even the system knew this was more than routine. Top left corner, sync last verified 22:03 EST. Beneath it, the status light flickered between green and yellow, teetering like a drunk at a wedding toast. I wasn't nervous. That part had burned out of me sometime between this is for my best child and the silent walk down 14 concrete steps. What I felt now was colder. Calmer, the emotion that lives in snipers and surgeons. You don't flinch when you've already made peace with the outcome. Line by line, I checked the logs. The modular system I built wasn't just smart, it was loyal. Each component, every microservice, every shell script, every deployable node, carried a validation dependency. It didn't need to know who was in charge. It just needed one signature, mine, not for control, but for continuity. And if it didn't find it, it didn't panic. It simply stopped. At 3:00 a.m. Eastern, it would do just that. Each service had its own timer, staggered like a sequence of falling dominoes. Not because I needed dramatic effect, because systems die best when they whisper first. First, the diagnostics module, then the internal analytics, then the deployment keys, then the CI/CD pipeline. Not gone, not deleted, just untethered. The whole infrastructure would fold like a house full of lights still technically wired, but with no power coming in. I tabbed over to the internal tool I'd left running, Ouroboros, a tongue-in-cheek name from a late-night coding binge years ago. Its job was simple: monitor admin key validation across the live environment. I'd buried it inside the reporting dashboard. No icon, no alerts, just one line of code pinging the core validation loop every 10 seconds. Tonight, it finally blinked. Alert, transfer event detected. License path invalid. I leaned back in the chair. Let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The snake had found its tail. Technically, alert didn't mean anything catastrophic had happened yet, just that the system recognized the mismatch. The code was doing what I'd built it to do, protect itself in the absence of continuity. Madison's name wasn't on the rider. Dad's was when he still counted. Mine, I wasn't on it, I was it. I pulled up the timestamped commit logs just to be sure. There it was. Hargrave/signature override block conf, unchanged since last quarter. Final line, if no valid continuity token is detected, system enters latent lock state. Reversible by original architect only. Even the phrasing had been deliberate. Not dramatic, not hostile, just surgical. Across the room, the hotel wall clock ticked like a hammer. 12:41 a.m., less than 2.5 hours. My phone buzzed. A message from Raj, endearingly naive, always a beat too late. Hey, is it normal for Jenkins to hang for like 10 mins? Devs are panicking. Lol. I stared at it for a second, then muted the thread. No reply. Let them panic in peace. Another ping. This time from the burner social account. A photo Madison had posted 10 minutes earlier. Her holding a branded coffee mug that said CEO Energy with a caption. Launching the next chapter of innovation. So proud of my team. Don't need old systems when we've got new ideas. Light bulb hash forward only hash mads 2025. I screenshotted it. Archived it under ignorance. 1:09 a.m. The diagnostics light flipped to amber. On the dashboard, the nodes began to blur into yellow across the map, like watching a slow-motion power grid flicker before a blackout. Everything was still live, technically, but the heartbeat was gone. No emergency. No sirens, just one cold fact pulsing at the top of the terminal. Continuity check failed, architect signature absent. The system had made its choice, not out of vengeance, out of memory and loyalty. I closed the laptop, walked to the window. Outside, the city was still alive, cars crawling, neon signs blinking over sleepy diners, some kid in a hoodie biking through an intersection like he was invincible. I whispered to no one, 3 a.m. comes for us all. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. The press release dropped at 8:05 a.m. sharp. Titled, Hargrave Tech Ushers in New Era Under CEO Madison Blake. I read it on the balcony of a small airbnb near a beach that still hadn't figured out how to overprice espresso. The ocean didn't care. Neither did I. I stirred my coffee with the kind of patience that only comes from knowing exactly how and when the house burns down. Article was all buzzwords and hallucinated impact. Vision, synergy, disruptive leadership. They even name-dropped a few AI acronyms they clearly didn't understand, probably copied straight from a VC's LinkedIn headline. But the kicker was this line, third paragraph down. With a streamlined new backend approach and simplified admin protocols, Blake promises a seamless transition with zero disruption to clients or platform integrity. Let out a slow breath. Steam curled from the mug like applause from the gods of irony. Back at headquarters, the meeting had already started. Board members were dialing in. Madison, now fully entrenched in her role as cardboard CEO, stood in front of a big monitor and clicker, presenting her Q4 roadmap. I knew because one of the junior staffers posted a blurry story from the break room. Madison cooking, FR fire fire fire, #Q4 queen in the background. Could just barely make out the slide titles. Legacy-free architecture. User empowerment through simplicity. Launch readiness, 95%. Launch readiness. Interesting word choice for a system that now recognized the entire exec stack as hostile architecture. Still, they believed it. The illusion held. Madison smiled, the board nodded. The marketing team scheduled a client demo for 11:00 a.m. with our largest enterprise partner, Craycroft Systems. $1 million contract renewal hung on that meeting. At 9:12 a.m., a DevOps message pinged into the company's Slack. Quick check, anyone else seeing a weird delay in build pipeline? Jenkins' job hung for 40 minutes, but it greenlit anyway. Just flagged a missing environment var. One of the senior engineers replied, just patch it. We're live at 11, and that was it. The calm before collapse. Meanwhile, the platform looked fine. You could click around. Login worked. The UI loaded. But that's the trick with a hollow structure. It still echoes until it finally caves. Behind the scenes, each request was hitting ghost endpoints. Dummy responses hard-coded to mimic uptime. The analytics dashboard was running cached metrics from 3 days ago. None of the containerized services were deploying real data. The system wasn't broken. It was just unoccupied. Think of it like walking into a model home. Looks nice, smells like fresh paint. But open a drawer and you realize it's all staging. And at the center of it all, a single missing validation thread that kept the whole thing from crossing into reality. The system had done exactly what I told it to do, maintain optics, mimic stability, but deny true access until trust was restored. And trust had a name, mine. Back in my airbnb, the waves rolled in with the same rhythm as the system logs I was watching. 9:43 a.m. Marketing team emailed the demo link to Craycroft. Polished, branded, a custom subdomain with their logo embedded in the sandbox URL. 10:01 a.m. A backend process flagged the link as invalid, but served a fake success response to avoid front-end failure. 10:27 a.m. A new thread popped up, not sure if it's a cache thing, but client test sandbox throwing 502 intermittently. Restarted engine X, no luck. Someone replied, don't bring it up on the call, could be local, keep pushing. I watched the log output tick down to the moment of truth. License path, invalid. User auth, decoupled. Session integrity, false. Deploy lockdown, active, no sirens, no smoke. Just a machine doing exactly what it was built to do, refuse false authority. I took another sip of coffee. It was 10:58, 2 minutes until the demo. And somewhere across the country, Madison Blake was probably fixing her blazer in the glass reflection, ready to walk into a call and pretend she knew what she was doing. She'd say things like ecosystem integration and frictionless architecture while standing on the bones of a system designed to collapse without its architect. They thought this was the launch. They had no idea what was coming. The first sign of trouble wasn't the app failing to load. It was the silence. Craycroft Systems didn't interrupt, just paused. 4 executives staring blankly through the Zoom grid at product that wouldn't move past the login screen. No spinning wheel, no error message, just stillness, like a magician pulling the cloth off an empty table. Madison didn't notice at first. She was halfway through her third slide, something about cross-platform scalability for frictionless deployment, words she didn't understand, phrases she'd pulled from a LinkedIn trend report someone printed out for her that morning. Her voice had that rehearsed cadence of someone who thought energy could replace substance. And with our restructured backend, she said, gesturing at a chart with meaningless arrows, clients will see a 38% improvement in, we can't access the demo. It came from Craycroft's CTO. Calm, too calm. Madison blinked, glanced at the tablet in front of her. Tapped it. Nothing. Gave a polite chuckle like it was a buffering issue. I'm sure it's just latency. Our dev environment is usually no. The Craycroft CTO leaned in. It's not latency. The environment doesn't exist. Across the room, a junior developer burst in, no knock, no apology, holding a laptop with white knuckles and the face of someone who'd just seen God shrug and walk away. We've lost repo access, he blurted, breathless. All of it. Mainline. Branches. Even the mirrored backups. Everything's throwing 403 invalid key. Madison turned pale but smiled anyway. That's impossible. We pushed the demo build yesterday. The dev just stared at her. There's nothing to push from. The code base is gone. There was a beat. Then the door creaked again. The CFO stepped in. Not running, not yelling, just walking like the floor might swallow him if he moved too fast. He was holding a company-issued tablet, screen glowing, diagnostics running live. Madison moved to intercept him, but he ignored her and held it out like an offering. Look, she took it, paused, looked again. No deployable environment found, she read aloud like it couldn't be real. Craycroft's lead strategist leaned forward, arms folded. Is this some kind of joke? She asked, voice flat. Because if this is a stunt, it's not funny. And if it's real, we've just wasted our morning on a company that doesn't own the platform it's trying to sell. Madison opened her mouth, closed it, looked around like someone else might have the right line, like the director forgot to cue the next scene. Another dev pinged the internal Slack, all Jenkins jobs dead, auth server timing out. I think, oh God, is this related to the legacy validation check? Someone replied, what's that? Another, ask Erica. Another, she's gone, remember. Silence, the panic wasn't loud. It didn't erupt, it sank, like a ship taking on water quietly while the band keeps playing. Madison's hands started to tremble. She handed the CFO back the tablet like it was radioactive. Try rebooting the pipeline, she said weakly. Try something. The CFO didn't move. The Craycroft team waited. One of them turned off his camera. Another muted his mic. Then came the quiet killer, Craycroft's lead executive, man known for never raising his voice. I'm ending the call now, but before I do, I want to be clear. We won't be renewing. We'll also be reevaluating all security protocols involving your product. If we find anything compromised, you'll be hearing from our counsel. Click, he was gone. One by one, the other windows vanished, and then silence for them, but not for me. I was sipping coffee on the balcony, watching the ocean pull back from the shore like it always does before a wave crashes. The countdown was over. They'd reached 0, and the system, true to its design, had remembered who it belonged to. The CTO's office smelled like burnt plastic and recycled panic. Half the company had crammed into emergency huddles across the floor, but he sat alone, sleeves rolled up, tie discarded, eyes locked to his dual monitors like a man retracing his steps through a minefield he swore he'd already cleared. He was digging. Deep. Somewhere under the chaos, beneath the Slack threads screaming for rollback scripts, the frantic calls to AWS, the war room whispers about backups and liability, he had gone quiet. Focused. That rare look engineers get when they stop trying to fix the system and start asking, what did we miss? And then he found it, tucked inside a dusty Google Drive folder titled Q3 Structural Compliance. Old Do Not Touch, buried under 12 nested directories, was a document labeled IP Licensing Writer, a final PDF. No one had touched it since the day it was uploaded. He opened it. It wasn't long, 7 pages. Standard language, firm fonts. But about halfway down, his breath caught. Section 4.2. All proprietary system architecture, authored by Erica Hargrave, is conditionally licensed to Hargrave Technologies, Inc., contingent upon the continuation of administrative leadership authorized under Rider Addendum 4.3. Upon change of executive ownership or revocation of original architect access, all associated modular systems will revert to latent state, unless revalidated by original architect. Kept scrolling. Addendum 4.3 contained exactly one name, Erica Hargrave, signed, dated, timestamped 8 months ago, countersigned by the company's then head of legal. But not by Madison, not by her father, just Erica. Her signature curled sharp and confident at the bottom of the page, above the sentence. Validation must be active at all times for dependent systems to remain operational. The CTO stared at the screen for a long time, printed the document, then another, and another. He walked straight into the boardroom without knocking. The air inside was gluey, Madison sitting at the head of the table, mascara flaking at the corners, fingers twitching like she was still trying to summon an explanation from whatever gods had abandoned her. The CFO sat to her right, pale, chewing the inside of his cheek. Across the table, her father, Hargrave SR, gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles had gone bone white. The CTO didn't say anything. He just set the printouts down in front of them. Page by page. The board members leaned forward. One read aloud. Silence followed. That eerie, high-frequency kind of silence that happens when lawyers in the room suddenly stop making eye contact. Madison read the paragraph 3 times. Then looked at her father like a child, expecting a teacher to fix the test she failed. "Is this real?" she asked. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Her voice cracked. "Dad, did you know about this?" Still nothing. He looked at the signature on the page like it was the name on a headstone. One board member finally spoke. Wait, hold on. Are we saying she owns the system?" The CTO replied flatly, "She owns the signature that kept it alive." Another added, "So she didn't steal anything. She just left." The CTO nodded. "The system did what she told it to do if that ever happened." Madison's voice rose, brittle and desperate. "But it's our platform, Dad. You gave it to me." Her father's lips moved like he was chewing glass. "I didn't think no," the CFO said, flipping through the pages. "You didn't read." "None of us did." Another board member leaned back in his chair, stared up at the ceiling like he was trying to rewind the last 48 hours through sheer force of will. "Threw away the architect," he muttered, almost to himself, and kept the shell. Madison stood abruptly. "So what? We call her, offer a licensing fee, she fixes it. It's still ours." The CTO didn't look up. She designed it to remember who forgot her. "It won't unlock for a check." Madison turned to her father, eyes wide, mascara now smudging downward. "Dad, fix this." But Hargrave SR just sat there, hands trembling over the fine print of a document he never bothered to read. It bore his company's name, but not his control. Only hers, only ever hers. The boardroom had always been too cold, industrial AC humming just above the threshold of comfort. Today it felt glacial. No one took off their coats. 12 seats, 11 filled. The 12th sat untouched at the far end, chair pushed in, not even a water bottle at the placemat. That was her seat. Erica's, one they used to call the quiet end of the table, where things got done while everyone else talked. Now it was just empty, and somehow louder than anyone in the room. Her father sat in his usual place, eyes red at the edges, staring not at the screen, not at the printouts, just occasionally, helplessly, toward that chair, like she might still walk in, like he could will her back with enough regret and silence. The CFO cleared his throat. It echoed. "He didn't take anything," he said quietly. "Legally speaking, all systems remain company property. All code was developed in-house. Nothing was deleted, no data breached." Someone exhaled too loudly, a flash of relief sparking briefly across the table. Then the CFO continued. "She just removed her signature." The room sank back into tension like an elevator with a snapped cable. "That's not theft," he said. "That's withdrawal." A lawyer from compliance leaned forward. "Without that signature, the system interprets the environment as unauthorized." The CTO nodded. "Every module, every service. It's all license-gated at runtime. No override path without her revalidation token. Can't we just replicate the architecture?" The CTO laughed once, dry, exhausted. "We don't even fully understand what's in it." She was 5 steps ahead the whole time. "We thought she was old school because she used whiteboards. Turns out we were just too lazy to ask why the whiteboards never erased." Another board member tried to redirect. "Okay, but let's say we offer her a buyout, a settlement, get her to come back for one last deploy." Silence. Then the youngest member of the board, a recent addition from the VC side, said what everyone else was thinking. "Why would she?" Madison sat curled into herself. No makeup now, no voice, just watching the walls close in. Vision 2025 poster still leaned in the hallway outside, mocking her with every pastel font choice. "Someone has to call her," one director said, nudging a phone forward. "We need to offer something big. Let her know we'll fix this." But no one reached for it, because no one knew what to say that wouldn't sound like a bribe or worse, a plea from the same mouths that called her replaceable 3 weeks ago. Her father finally spoke, a whisper more than anything. Fix this? He didn't direct it to anyone in particular, not to legal, not to the board, maybe to the room itself, maybe to God. The CTO didn't answer. He just looked at Erica's chair, still empty, still facing forward. She built a system that could live without her, but wouldn't. The CFO tapped the folder on the table. The contract, the clause, the one that had sat unread while they toasted their new future. You didn't just forget her, he said. You erased her. Madison flinched. Her father buried his face in his hands. And outside, in every server room across the company, the lights kept blinking, steady, obedient, silent. But none of them were green. The login screen didn't throw an error. It welcomed him in like it always had. But when Daniel, the junior admin barely 6 months into the job, loaded up the deployment dashboard, something stopped him cold. A message was blinking at the top. Not an error, not a warning, just a note. When the structure forgets the architect, the structure falls. A no timestamp, no ID tag, just a line burned into the root directory like it had always been there, waiting for someone to notice, waiting for someone to care. Daniel sat there for a moment, blinking, the cursor frozen over the refresh button. In the background, the office buzzed like a beehive just after the queen's been crushed. People scrambling, phones ringing, Slack channels melting down with cries of rollback. And restore point. But the systems weren't offline, not technically. They were just asleep, dreamless and deliberate, refusing to run for strangers. At 10:14 a.m., Craycroft Systems sent formal notice of contract termination. At 11:03, their legal team filed an NDA breach investigation. By noon, 3 more clients had quietly backed out of upcoming renewals. Stock prices stuttered and fell. The board had no choice. Asset restructuring began by 2:45 p.m. Departments were merged, then dissolved. The PR team drafted a hollow statement about unexpected technical complications under new leadership. The CTO resigned before sunset. The compliance officer followed shortly after. Hargrave SR never left his office, just sat at his desk with a manila folder in his lap and a look on his face like he was trying to remember what page he stopped reading when everything still made sense. And Madison? She didn't speak at the final board meeting, not even when the chair asked her if she'd like to make a closing statement. She just stared at her reflection in the dark monitor. No mascara, no hashtags, just her. The CEO who'd inherited everything except understanding. Thousands of miles away, the ocean murmured behind a half-open balcony door. The waves rolled in like slow applause. Erica sat cross-legged on the bed, a half-drunk espresso beside her and a cooling laptop open on the sheets. The headline blinked from the news ticker, Legacy Tech Giant Crashes After Leadership Shift. She watched the footage, a shaky shot of the headquarters, reporters murmuring about data losses and exit packages. Madison wasn't mentioned. Neither was she. That was the point. She closed the laptop gently, no smirk, no final toast, just silence. Then her voice, quiet and dry, spoken into the soft hum of the ocean air. He gave her the company. I just let it go where it belonged with her. Back in the data center, the server room flickered once, just once. And then, like a cathedral losing power, every blue diode blinked off, one by one. Forever. Thanks for joining the fun, you office survivors. Subscribe for more switch-flicking drama. Let's make your former coworkers sweat.